Yo, it's good. It's your man 100 Grand Ross for The Rock Never Stops. Tonight, I need to do a video about these Golden State Warriors. Man, there's so many layers to this of what took place tonight. I think it was encapsulated in the moment where Stephen Curry realized he has just won another NBA championship. He starts breaking down, having this very emotional response. And I think it hit me at the same time what this moment meant. And I want to dive into that in this video. If you like the video, smash the like button for me. It's not for everybody, but hit subscribe and the bell for notifications. Leave your comments and all that stuff. This should be a fun video. Let me start off by saying I'm from the Bay Area. I'm from about 40 minutes from where the Warriors used to play in Oakland. Ironically, it's also 40 minutes from where the Warriors currently play in San Francisco. I've lived long enough to see the times when the Golden State Warriors even came down to the city I grew up in San Jose. And I've seen so many iterations of this team in its different peaks and valleys, whether it was Run TMC with Billy Owens and Chris Gatlin, and of course Tim Hardaway, Chris Mullin, Mitch Richmond, right? But then I saw the next iterations, the quick show of Chris Webber before he's shipped off, and you have the Joe Smith era, Anton Jameson, and Larry Hughes, Gilbert Arenas, Jason Richardson, the We Believe, Baron Davis, all these different iterations of this team, how it's come and gone over the years, cheering for them, showing up for them, going to stadiums, sitting in the nosebleeds at the very top of the rafters, and still yelling out, Warriors, Warriors, even when we lost. Like we would be in the parking lot, we would be leaving the arena yelling out Warriors, and we just lost and we're not going to make the playoffs, you know? But the heart and the energy of the city of Oakland, of the Bay Area, of this team, of this franchise for so long resonated in a very personal way. All that's to say is it was a bit of a whirlwind when we saw new owners come in and seemingly see this upheaval take place. We all know at the same time the new ownership came in, the Lakers came in with their ownership group. You have Mark Jackson, who was already there. I can't remember if he was already there or if they brought him in, but Chris Mullin was there running the show. They bring in Jerry West at some point. And you have Mark Jackson, who's there, who creates a foundation of defense and accountability and culture. Guys playing together, tethered together. He makes some great roster adjustments. Harrison Barnes was not playing well off the bench, didn't want to play off the bench. He was a high draft pick. And so he asked Andre Iguodala, the veteran who had been an all-star, who had been an Olympian, a gold medalist, all defensive player who had every right to say, nah, youngster, you come off the bench. He asks him to come off the bench, and he does. And we begin to see this culture of sacrificing for the betterment of the team. Then later on, you see the adjustment of starting Draymond Green. First, David Lee is an all-star. Golden State Warriors coming from the New York Knicks, averaging 20 and 10. And despite being an all-star, when he gets hurt in the playoffs, Draymond Green emerges as this kind of cataclysmic weapon or aspect of this Golden State Warriors that seemingly unlocks Clay and Steph with his playmaking, his being a defensive anchor next to Andrew Bogut, who was only available for a couple games in that series. But it's to say Mark Jackson saw something, and the next season says, David Lee, we're going to need you to come off the bench, right? Like these are critical changes at the foundation. And then you see later on more changes come in. One, I would say it wasn't a change, but it was something that he did. And I always want to give credit to those predecessors who paved the way, which is why I'm acknowledging Mark Jackson here, that he believed in the Splash Brothers long before any of us did. He said they were going to become the greatest shooting backcourt of all time. He said he was looking at the greatest shooter he had ever seen of all time. And remember, he had played with Reggie Miller, lived through, and played through the emergence of Ray Allen, right? He's seen great shooters. And he's saying, before anybody else, Stephen Curry, despite all the injuries, is the greatest shooter he's ever seen. And with Klay Thompson, they were going to be great, right? He gave him a green light before the league ever even thought that he could be what he became. Fast forward, you have new ownership, brings in a new coach, Steve Kerr, and takes what was built, and immediately that very next season, they win a championship, right? And we all know the story, the back and forths with LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. They get 3 out of the 4. They go to 5 straight finals. They lose the 5th to the Toronto Raptors. KD leaves, and all of a sudden it's this moment like, man, are they going to go back? Are they going to return to this team that is trying to get back to the mountaintop? Well, Bob Myers and Joe Lacob, they do an amazing job of retooling during this time, flipping Kevin Durant's contract into a D'Angelo Russell, who's coming from the Brooklyn Nets, who had just become an all-star, flipped him to Minnesota and grabbed Andrew Wiggins, someone who could play a critical role in this team, but nobody really saw it then initially. It was a potential. If you listen to them, they would talk about they wanted to give him a real try on this roster to see if he can emerge as a player they were needing him to be. And as Klay Thompson was nursing his way back from multiple major injuries, we weren't sure what this team was ever going to look like again. And yet, you see Stephen Curry and Draymond Green maintain the course, even though Stephen Curry dealt with heavy injuries as well. And then you see these young guys, Jordan Poole, eventually Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody. You begin to see these young guys begin to start showing promise. And you see them start bringing in veterans in this season where they're like, you know what? This is our moment. This is our moment. I don't think anyone could have seen it playing out the way that it did, right? The Los Angeles Lakers completely collapsing. The Los Angeles Clippers being decimated by injuries, right? The Phoenix Suns succumbing to the greatness of Luka Doncic, right? Doncic not being ready to overcome a champion in the Golden State Warriors. Neither was Memphis and Ja Morant. And they found themselves positioned to win another championship. And here is where kind of this story is sitting today, where you have a team that is built around a culture of being together, right? They have this mantra. Oh, shoot, I forgot. Did I forget the mantra? How does it go? I'll think of it in a second, but it came out during the We Believe series, right? Strength in numbers. Strength in numbers. And it's this idea that, hey, we're not built around one guy. Even though they have this transcendent talent in Stephen Curry, who is completely transforming the game of basketball in the NBA and around the world, right? He's just seemingly unathletic, and I want to say unathletic in terms of NBA standards, right? We've had players who have played like a Stephen Curry never being given a full opportunity to do so because it wasn't popularized yet, right? I'm trying to think of the Spanish player played on their international team for so long, but he was this amazing shooter doing much of what we see Stephen Curry doing today. He was doing in Europe, right? But when he came to the U.S., guys were like, hell no. Coaches were like, no, you're not going to do this. You're not going to play this game, quick shooting, deep balls, moving the ball around you. Like we're not going to do that. And yet you see Stephen Curry emerge as this talent that completely transforms how coaches see the game of basketball. Early on in the Stephen Curry, Steve Kerr era, you see the first couple of seasons, I mean, Steve Kerr would have, he would have a heart attack, a conundrum many times seeing Stephen Curry take these 30-foot threes, and he would jump up off the bench, and he'd be like, what are you, and just as he would want to get mad, it would swish. And you would see Kerr just have to turn around and just walk back to his seat. And it's almost a hilarious thing now, because understanding what it means to be a coach and all um, these kind of historical ideas of how the game of basketball is played. And then you start seeing all these other teams try to replicate that. The Houston Rockets, right? Even now the Atlanta Hawks and other teams, like, oh, we can just shoot. We can get up all these threes. And it's like, no, you don't have a transcendent three-point shooter. You don't have a Stephen Curry. You don't have a Klay Thompson. You can't replicate what we do. And today, they stand as a dynasty. One of, I want to say, only 4 teams now to have ever had a true dynasty. I'm talking about 4 or more championship in about a 10-year period, right? You had the Los Angeles Lakers, got the Boston Celtics, but you also got the San Antonio Spurs, where Steve Kerr was able to cut his teeth. Oh, and then you also have the Chicago Bulls, where Steve Kerr was a part of that as well. And so he ended up being the perfect, I guess, the perfect piece for what they would become, right? He's seen three-peats. He's seen what it means to go back to the finals year after year after year and have to prepare yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, as a team to be able to get all the way to the end, right? Think about all the lessons learned from the 73-win season, and then they fall short, right? Seemingly running out of gas because of what they put out during the regular season, and recognizing that they needed to be able to conserve energy. They needed to be able to ensure that they can make the full length of the journey to complete the deal, right? And this is what's interesting, because I think this is how they essentially beat Boston in this series. Yeah, there were strategies and there was all the X's and O's, but the Warriors had more energy in the tank. I want to say it was somewhere around game 3 that I saw for the first time in the series Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum not able to close out. Marcus Smart not closing out on a shooter. Before then, they closed out on every single shooter. They were so consistent and so on top of it, it was smothering. But after a while, you see the war of attrition really taking place on them. That to play that level of defense and be so reliant upon their playmaking and their offensive creation, they were becoming exhausted. And it was apparent that they weren't going to have the legs to overcome what the Warriors were doing. And this is where you begin to see the Warriors really begin to separate themselves from the Boston Celtics. That they had an offensive system where they were able to get easy baskets, moving the ball around with a high basketball IQ, a bunch of playmaking individuals, right? Whether it was Draymond Green, Kayvon Looney even did some good playmaking passes and back doors, right? You got Stephen Curry, you got Andre Iguodala, you even got some Jordan Poole playmaking. You've got guys who could move the ball and understood this system, that even if they weren't great passers, they understood the passes that needed to be made in their system. And as a result, it created so many easy scoring opportunities that you see the difference between Boston and Golden State was that because they could find easy buckets, they could withstand shooting slumps or an inability to get their shot off in one-on-one play and still play great defense. Well, at the end of the day, Boston didn't have the legs. And now Stephen Curry and the Golden State Warriors, they're champions. They have their dynasty. They have one of the greatest runs a core team has ever had. Whether it's somewhere between Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Phil Jackson. Whether it's Kobe, Shaq, and Phil. Whether it's Pat Riley, Kareem, James Worthy, and Magic Johnson. Whether it was the Bill Russell crews back in the day, or the Larry Birds, right? This is a historic group to be in, and to see a team that has emerged from being the laughingstock of the NBA for a long time when they hadn't been in the playoffs for over 10 plus years, right? They went from being a team that had failed in many ways to make the impact that they desired to make. It is incredible to see them today, not just a dynasty, not just a band of Hall of Famers in Andre Iguodala. I think he's going to make the Hall of Fame, even if it's the first or second ballot, right? Stephen Curry is going to go down into that top 10 of greats, of all-time greats. He has officially punched his ticket into the top 10, right? And we can all argue about that later. Klay Thompson has punched his ticket into the Hall of Fame. Draymond Green has punched his ticket into the Hall of Fame, right? Steve Kerr has punched his ticket into the Hall of Fame. These guys are transformative in what they have done and meant to the game of basketball, and even more so to the Bay Area. Even though there's mass gentrification and, many of the people who are now rooting for the team and showing up at the bars and in Chase Stadium barely moved here a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and have no idea about the Monte Ellis days and Antoine Jameson back-to-back 50-point games and Gilbert Arenas Agent Zero before he went to Washington, and don't remember Jason Richardson's slam dunk championship in Oracle Arena, right? They weren't there for a lot of the history of this team. And yet still, what it means to the people who did grow up with this legacy and seeing and understanding where this team has been, where they've come from, where they are today, is nothing short of amazing. It's something that teams only dream about. Think about Oklahoma City and how close they were after losing their first time in the NBA Finals. I mean, of course, they were Seattle's team in Oklahoma City, so they had been to the finals before with Gary Payton and Sean Kemp, Deadlift Shrimp, and them, Sam Perkins, right? Nate McMillan. But with this iteration of Oklahoma City, they had Kevin Durant, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Serge Ibaka, right? They had Jeff Green at the time. Everybody would have thought this was a team that was going to get back. And yet they never did, right? They chose the cheaper route, right? They made decisions that cost them. And so we see it doesn't matter how much talent you have. It's not guaranteed that you're going to have the opportunities to get back and to actually win. To actually win. Just ask LeBron. He went to the NBA Finals 8 times, right, in a row. And yet you have the Golden State Warriors. They are a team, they are a franchise who has been able to capitalize off their talent and maximize the opportunities in every aspect of how this team has evolved, whether it was Stephen Curry's early injuries that ended him up in a very advantageous contract, right? I think it was like 5 years, $55 million, right? For someone who in 2 seasons would become an MVP, right? He's making role player money as an MVP, which allowed them to be able to add in players like Andre Iguodala, right? Andrew Bogut. It allowed them to add in, even though I think Curry got paid after the Andrew Bogut, but it's to say that they could re-sign guys, right? They were able to maintain this roster. They were able to give Klay the money that he deserved early on. They were able to make these different moves because of the situation and how things had evolved. And they leveraged every bit of it. And so kudos and shout out to Bob Myers and Joe Lacob and what they've done in this organization. But I also want to say shout out to Stephen Curry. And I want to give him a personal shout out because Stephen Curry has evolved. For those of us who remember where Stephen Curry began in his career, for those of us who remember the guy who's a great shooter but couldn't necessarily beat guys one-on-one off the dribble early on in his career, especially those who are more athletic, have more length, size. That was the way to beat him. You can put a bigger guy on him. Remember what LeBron James did, to him in the finals, and just, I'm too big, I'm too athletic. And yet Stephen Curry has figured out, he never stopped working. He never stopped working on his game. To now, he can be in the type of a flow of an offense where you can just give him the ball and say, create something. You can give him the ball and say, you know what, go one-on-one. Go one-on-one. Take him to the basket. against the team's best defender, against the Marcus Smarts, against the Jaylen Browns, against the Al Horfords, right? Getting all the way to the rim, key buckets, where Jason Tatum couldn't even get to the rim at 6'8" with a 7-foot wingspan. The 6'3", 6'4" Stephen Curry is able to get to the rim, right? He has worked on his game and refined his craft to the point where he was now able to be crowned. And I didn't even check. I didn't have a chance to check if he won Finals MVP, but I'm pretty damn sure he did. Otherwise, there needs to be a riot before there's a parade. Because what Stephen Curry did was nothing short of spectacular. I mean, when guys were waning, guys were struggling, right? Wiggins was showing up, but Clay wasn't quite showing up. And then it would be Clay and then kind of Wiggins back. And Draymond really struggled in this finals and, you know, kind of being overmatched in a lot of ways on the interior, but still did his best to hold it down. And Kayvon Looney, you know, okay, he's giving you some really good minutes in this playoffs and in the finals. And Jordan Poole still figuring it out, was struggling early on in this series. It never really kind of got unleashed, but still had nice moments. But all of it was on the shoulders of what Stephen Curry was doing. And kudos to the coaching staff to devise schemes and to make sure he was prepared and healthy and working on his body. But Stephen Curry just had an eye of determination, that whole Rocky Eye of the Tiger type deal, where he was determined to win. He was determined to play at a level consistently that set him apart, that set his team apart, that allowed everyone else to follow his lead and to say, I don't have to be the man. I think that was the challenge in Boston, where Tatum was supposed to be the man. And I'm going to go into this on another video, but Tatum was supposed to be the man, but wasn't. This whole series struggled. I actually think Jaylen Brown was probably more effective, at least in his ability to get to the rim and attack, because he didn't need to get into this rhythm of, you know, dribbling side to side and, you know, finding this rhythm to then take you off the dribble. I thought he was far more effective, and he's supposed to be the number 2. And then you have Marcus Smart and Al Horford being leaned on even heavier because you couldn't rely upon 25 to, you know, plus points a game from Jason Tatum with good percentages. And a lot of that also has to do with the amazing defense and emergence of Andrew Wiggins, who has officially turned himself into a winner. I mean, it's going to be a hell of a job for the Golden State Warriors to be able to re-sign him after next season when he's an unrestricted free agent. So many playoff teams are going to be looking at him like, yo, this is who we want. We would love to have a guy like this, right? But I wanted to really applaud this team. Their future is bright as hell. They're healthy. They have depth. They have young talent. We still haven't even seen what James Wiseman is yet to become, going into his, junior year? Or his 3rd year in the NBA, right? You got Moses Moody, who looks great. Jonathan Kuminga, who looks great. You got some other guys to try to re-sign this offseason, like Otto Porter Jr. And I think Kayvon Looney is still under contract. But they're going to have to figure that out. But their future is bright. Their core is intact. Their youth are stepping up. And I expect that they're only going to extend the life expectancy of this core of Steph, Clay, and Draymond. And so I'm excited about the future. I'm excited about the parade, just in time for Juneteenth. And there's going to be spectacular energy around the city here in Oakland. And I'm excited for it. I'm here for it. But yeah, I think I'm going to end it there. I'm going to do some more videos around this. I think I'm going to do a video on ranking Stephen Curry all time now. I think that's going to be a great ranking. And then we're going to look at, some other things that happen with Boston in their future. But for now, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts about this team, about where they're headed, about what they've been able to accomplish. But with that, I'm going to holler at y'all next time. It's late. I'm going to get some sleep. And I look forward to seeing y'all in the next video. Peace.